Welcome to the Can Stutter Canadian Stuttering Association podcast. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today on our fifth Can Stutter podcast. I am Lisa Wilder. I am on the board of directors of Can Stutter, and I'm happy to have here with me today Hannah Smith. Hannah is a music educator, singer, and a multi-disciplinary artist who lives in Toronto. She is a graduate of York University and the co-artistic director of GreatFelt Theater and is the writer and director of a project currently in development called Take It Away. Hannah, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. Thank you.
Well, I guess we'll get going here with, I just have a general thing to ask you about what music means in your life and how it relates to your stuttering.
Thank you. Well, first things first, I think with having a stutter my whole life, I think I'll start there. With having a stutter my whole life, like I did feel, I did feel like the performance of having to like, I have to like speak in a different way right now to this person, or like if someone's asking me a question in school, I have to mask it in some way so it was a lot of pressure, you know what I mean? And a lot of that had to do with the same ideologies of performing, of going on stage. And I think there's a lot of similarities in that, even in like your everyday life, that not everybody has, especially when they don't stutter, right? Yeah, with music in my life, music has always been a strength in my voice because, like, as we know, like when you are singing, you don't stutter, which is, and honestly, like with my voice, it's always been like I've always just loved my voice, and the way like it feels, not the way it sounds, but the way it feels when I'm singing. And I think I think when you can love a part of your voice, I think that's really, that's where it comes down to it. How my music relates to my stuttering, I really feel like it didn't at first, I'll be honest. It didn't at first. And then once I started becoming a teacher and like teaching students, and like, when kids would say like, Miss Hannah, how do you do this? I'm like, oh, well, it's kind of like I would start like explaining it to different kids in different ways. Obviously, like, with the music training I had, like I had the generalization of how a voice worked, and I took that into my lessons. But then I really started feeling like, oh, this is deeper than it just your voice working as a singer's voice does. It's actually, there's a lot of connection here between when you're speaking and when you're singing. There's a lot of connection. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. How does the voice, is there a connection here? Is there, like, when I'm teaching a student, for example, and I have, we're working on lyrics and things. The way that I teach sometimes, I'm like, oh, it's kind of like how I learned to talk in speech therapy, which is really interesting. And sometimes I'm like, oh, would this have helped me back then? The way I'm looking at lyrics, the way I'm seeing the way the lyrics are like going into the next word, for example, like A big example I give is and the words and I. Like if you were to sing like a Whitney Houston ballad, and I will always love you, for example. And I, if you like, for me in that example, like that's where it really helped me. Like, oh, like if you emphasize on one sound of it, that might be able to help go into the next. So there's different things like that. As a voice teacher, I learned that I was thinking back. I'm like, oh, would that have, maybe that would have helped me. But yeah, I feel like um not even like those are just the mechanics of becoming a voice teacher and singing. Then it really got me interested in, okay, but where does the stutter lie? Is it different? Is it just made me question like a lot of different aspects of, speaking in around the voice and everything.
So
um
you
yeah.
stuttered more, sorry, but you stuttered more as a child and you
Yes.
had speech therapy. Now,
Yes.
how did that impact you kind of from an identity standpoint or just how you related to people, your relationships? Because I found that had a big impact on me when I was young, but and it seems from what I've read, from some things you've written, it did impact you now, what you went through then.
Yes. Yes. Great question. When I still stutter a lot. um, it's more when I'm like around and I'm not in like a performance mindset, if that makes sense. Even right now, like I'm not stuttering a lot because something in my brain just kind of clicks on where it's like performance mode, go. But when I'm not in performance mode, when I'm stressed, when I'm like anxiety filled, it's worse. um as a child though, yes, I did. There was a lot of days where I was like, it affected me in the ways where I felt, oh, I'm gonna be listened to differently. People aren't gonna understand what I'm saying. I remember like, like friends or like people around would say, oh, pardon. And it wasn't like they were being rude about it. It was just they just didn't understand what the word I said. And there was that simple. So those memories have stuck, and those things I don't carry them, but like when I think back, it's like those are things that kind of pop up. And I think into adulthood, it's yes, I took speech therapy for about a year, and I think in that I learned the tools, so I do carry them and they do help at some points. But to be honest, I'm more thinking about the performance aspects of my voice more than those speech therapy techniques, if that makes sense. Like I'm
Yes.
still like I can still remember some of the techniques that were given. At the same time though, like my voice just kind of, yeah, it just kind of goes into this like performance mode if I'm
Yes, well, I've heard a lot of actors. I mean, there are singers out there like Carly Simon who stuttered badly and yet she could sing and so wonderfully. And it really, not only was it so wonderful that she could perform
yeah.
that way, but that the confidence it must have given her.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've also heard of actors who stuttered who say when they put on a different identity, when they're in a different role, they
Yeah.
found their stuttering wasn't a problem, which
Yeah.
I find that really fascinating how speech is related to performance, to
Yes.
identity, and to it's all tangled up in those things.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And that's honestly where I feel it's, I don't know, not stuck, but like I relate to that so heavily because I think as when you study acting, when you study theater performance, you are working on, and when you're getting ready to go on stage, that was the thing I found in my York days, where I was like, okay, I have a character, she has these lines, and she has these objectives, and these, like, this is her goal, and this is where she's got to go, but she doesn't have a stutter. So how are we going to make that stutter not happen? Even though we know it's probably not going to happen because, yeah, we're putting on this new hat, this new mask, for example. But yeah, it's how in case it happens, what are we? So I was constantly thinking about it, even though when I'm speaking, in like a performance context, like I probably won't, but it was a constant fear of like, okay, what if it does, and what if I quote unquote mess up? It's not messing up, but that was the mindset. And then
Right, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
I've heard that that I'm not very much of a covert stutterer. I'm very overt in my stuttering, but people who are covert and they kind of live in this fear of of losing control of their speech. They may not stutter as much overtly, but they always have this fear kind of undermining, feeling like it could undermine them. It doesn't have to undermine them, but they have as much anxiety as any other stutterer
yeah.
does. But I did want to talk to Hannah about the themes. I know you're very involved in a in in a in a theater right now. What are some of the themes in your work there?
Very much when I started this idea, it wasn't about, any really anything at first. I just, sat down, was like, I just need to write something. And then I really learned about what I was writing about was stuttering. And it scared me so bad because that was the first time I've ever really opened up about it. Because with my stutter, it can I can mask it to a point. Like at some points it will just come back. Um yeah, and I when I started talking about it, it was almost a catharsis where I felt like, oh, it feels really good to talk about this. Oh my gosh. And a lot of people related to it. So the themes that I brought up at that in the first phase was maybe not a lot of folks identified the same way as I did with having a stutter, but they identified with having, another form of neurodiversity. Some folks on the project had auditory processing disorder, or they had Tourette's syndrome or dyslexia. So different things that affect your voice and the way you speak, the way you understand. I had folks like that on the project, not like that, but who had those experiences on the project. And
How does neurodivergence fit in?
neurodivergence is the way the brain, because you can understand the same things and you can like grasp the same arts, because a lot of our show had to deal with music and movement, and that's just a way our brains just kind of came in and like found the beauty of speech, and like you can think about things in different ways. For example, we had a day in rehearsal, in our little workshop rehearsal we had, where I said, why don't we like think about our voices and we draw them. And so folks drew their voices and all of them were different. It was so interesting. If this is how I feel my voice, this is how I feel my brain works. It was a really beautiful way to see your voice on a page and go, okay. And then we created a movement piece around it, around your specific voice type, we'll say. And yeah, it was a very beautiful way to do that. And I feel like with stuttering, um, there were different for my stutter, and again, I don't have the scientific knowledge of how stuttering works. I'm very new to this not concept, because I have the experience, but new to the knowledge around like the science of it all and like how it works. um all I have is experience, and that's what
Well,
this project I wanted to
you
create.
know, a lot of the science doesn't know. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like this thing they haven't really determined,
Mhm.
something that's been hard to pin down over the years,
Absolutely.
over the years of research. But what kind of reactions have you got from audiences to to your work?
So far, folks have been touched in ways where they are relating to it as well. Like they see through a movement piece. And once they understand that, oh, they're talking about their voices, it's bringing an image to life, if that makes sense. Like it's giving folks a way that they can see yeah, and not just hear the voice. They're able to see it and they're able to understand it through that sense, we'll say. Um, and also like folks, when you combine I tend to think very like abstractly in times with my work too. Like my research question became, what if a musical note had a stutter? And combining those ideas of music and those ideas to uh into speech and into like stuttering, and like what if that note stuttered, and how would that feel? Because with music there is a huge structure, it's underlying everything. There's so much to still learn about music. But yeah, and like so much other feedback that we've gotten to is around, like, because at that point it was very exploratory with other folks in the room too, and very like the audience was like understanding that this was still in the process. It wasn't a done show. It was, folks had the understanding that it was like phase one because it was just so much to talk about and it was so much to unravel, and we're still unraveling it. The theater industry in Toronto is, I would say, very accepting of all kinds of ideas. They're very new to the ideas, I will say. From folks I've talked to, the first reaction I get is, well, that's new. Oh, it's very like, they're like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of it like that. So I think bringing new ideas in itself is scary. And when you're talking about something that you at one point were really afraid to talk about and bring up, that's a whole other layer to it. But where I lie with it right now is it's so important. It's bringing up all these conversations that maybe somebody in the audience who doesn't stutter and won't stutter, maybe they'll be impacted some way. And that's my goal, is to first make a show that is impactful for folks in the stuttering community, no matter what place on the spectrum of that you lie, like on the severity spectrum. If you stutter like maybe a little bit, or if you stutter a lot, this show is for you. And it's about understanding that there's so many different ways, and there is another way to view your voice other than my voice has a stutter. That's a great identity checkpoint. I have a stutter, and to say that is amazing. It's another way as well in this show to say, I have a stutter, and here's what it can look like, and here's what it can sound like. And that's what I want this show to do.
Yes, the relationship in theater, the relationship between the performer and the
Hi,
audience
everybody.
is so
Thanks
direct and
for
immediate and
joining me today
instantaneous.
on our
And
fifth
it's
Can
not like other
Stutter
other
podcast.
forms of
I
art
am
we take
Lise
in, the
Wilder.
very
I am on the board of
movies
of
or what we look at on our phones. But
directors of
yes,
Can
it must
Stutter,
have
and I'm
be able to
happy to
really
have here
reach
with me
people. There must
today
be
Hannah
a
Smith.
fear there too
Hannah is
of
a
alienating people who are like, what is this? I don't know what this means.
music
And a fear of losing an
educator,
audience, but at the
singer,
same time
and a
reaching an audience, and you'd hope
multidisciplinary
to bring those two
artist
together, I
who lives
imagine.
in
Yes, you're right.
Toronto.
Yeah,
She is a
it's a constant,
graduate of
emotion playing
York
in any theater creative's brain, is like, okay, does this make
University,
sense? But
and
is it still to my
the
vision? But then, like,
co
you still you teeter totter a little bit. But um, for myself in this
artistic
project, the core is
director
finding the love
of
and acceptance, maybe not acceptance, the
GreatFelt
love and
Theater,
understanding that your voice
and
is an
is
ever
the writer
changing
and
thing.
director
And
of
yeah, you're right.
a
Scientists don't have all the answers
project
yet. We don't have all the answers yet, but we still do
currently
have the
in
instrument that we're using.
development
And the
called
instrument can be used in different ways. And the instrument kind
Take
of
It
has
Away.
control of us at sometimes.
Hannah, thanks for joining me
And especially
today.
with folks in
Thanks for
in the
having me,
stuttering
Lisa.
community,
Thank you.
it can take control
Well,
of
I
you.
guess we'll
And what
get
you choose to do with that
going here with. I just
is
have
the
a
relationship that
general
you build with your
thing to
voice.
ask
And that's
you
the theme that the show is
what
taking on. And
about
that's what I hope
what
audiences understand and they can feel in
music
whatever
means in your
capacity
life
that they
and how it
have.
relates to your
But yeah, it
stuttering.
is a constant
Thank
fear
you.
that I have for sure as a playwright,
Well, first
a new
things first, I
emerging playwright
think
too.
with
as a
with having a
deviser,
stutter my whole
director,
life, I think
because
we'll start there.
there's
With
at
having a
first
stutter my
there's the
whole life,
relationship
like um
with
I did
myself and my
feel,
script. It's like, okay, does this make sense?
I did feel
Okay,
like the
great.
performance
Now we're going
of
to bring
having
in
to like,
people. And it's like,
I have to
okay,
like
now as a
speak in a
director
different
and
way right
playwright, I
now
now
into
have
this
to
person, or like
like
if
have
someone's
that
asking me a
connection
question in school, I
between,
have to
folks
mask
and,
it in some way so
have
it could,
them
so it
like
was a lot of
understand the
pressure,
vision.
you
So
know what
now
I
I got to
mean?
speak to
And a
them
lot of
about
that
it.
had to do
And
with
then
the
we got to take
same
that rehearsal space to a
ideologies of
stage or to a
perform
staged
of going
reading
on
if that's what we're
stage.
doing in this
um
process.
and I
So
think
all of these
I
different,
think
it's just
there's a
gonna,
lot of similarities
it's
in
right here
that,
right
even in
now,
like your
and it's
everyday
gonna go
life,
a
that
little bit
not
out, and
everybody
it's gonna
has,
go a
especially
lot of the
when
ways
they don't
out. So
stutter,
it's
right?
just, it's opening
um
up
yeah,
basically, which is really
with music in
exciting,
my
but
life,
yes,
music has
very,
always
very scary at
been
the
a
same
strength in my
time, which
voice
I think is
because
a good
like
thing. I think.
Yeah, well,
as we
it's
know, like when
definitely
you are singing,
very
you don't
demanding,
stutter,
and
which
you,
is,
but
and
you
honestly,
also would
like
have that instant
with my voice,
gratification, or that
it's
instant
always been
such an immediate response from people. But I know you're teaching and you have your performance work
Yeah.
too. I guess those two activities really feed into each other.
They do, yes, yes. And I think they feed into each other in a beautiful way. There's a lot of speaking in both of those. So it's like, okay, how long can we not last? I don't want to say it like that, but like how is the instrument going to feel today? How is my voice going to feel today? And I think going from being, I mean, professional in both ways, but more like having a professionalism as a teacher, you're talking to parents, you're talking to kids, and you're showing, how what we did today, and like all these different things that we did with our voice, or as a piano teacher as well, like what we did in piano class today. And so there's, you're using your voice in different ways there. And then if you're going to go right back to rehearsal or right back to your writing time, it's a whole other shift that you have to, it's another mask that you got to put on. For example, it's like another hat that you have to wear, and you got to switch them out. So that in itself can be really exhausting, especially when you're going into a rehearsal space and you got to now put on this, you're the one in control of the rehearsal space. But then I've also had moments in rehearsal in the past where I've come home from work. Now I'm going to rehearsal. I've had dinner on my way home from work, and then I go right into rehearsal, and I'm thinking I have the steering wheel. I'm the navigator of this rehearsal. I don't like to say I'm in control of rehearsal, because as a theater creative and as someone who like collaborates a lot with my artists and the work I do, I like to say it in a way of like, I have the steering wheel, but we are in this together. We are going to navigate this together. But I have the wheel. Um, and yeah, and just, but also the fear there is, but what if the wheel, my voice shakes, and what if it stutters, and what if can that read like I don't have control, is a fear that I've always been playing with in my head. So yes, the work I'm doing feels really good, can hold a lot of, catharsis for an audience. That's my hope and dream. In the process of it all, as someone who is learning about her neurodiversity, is still navigating her stutter, it can feel a little shaky at times. And I think that's okay. And that has, and that, because if that's your driving force, if that's where you feel everything is lying and it's all important, keep going with that.
Well, I guess that if you had a message to send to anyone out there who stutters or who's just neurodiverse, but I personally believe nobody's normal. Or what would your message be?
Lead with that. Lead with your lead with the identity that you are creating in yourself, and lead with the way that you feel in your heart that you want to be in life. Lead with that. I did it, and it scared me so bad at first. But if there's one thing I always tell people, no matter what they're going through in life, if it feels scary right now, you might not understand right now what this feeling is and why you're going through the certain thing, but soon you will. And that I said to myself at the beginning of this take it away process, and I'm still saying it today, but I led with, in my experience, I led with that mindset of I feel this is going to be important and I feel this is important because I felt a tug. I'm like, okay, I know this isn't just going to be for me. I know there's going to be people out there that can relate to this in some way. So I'm going to lead with that. So whatever you're going through, whatever way your identity, if you stutter, if you feel like you're different, and if you feel like you're not fitting in, that is a-okay. I think everybody kind of has a moment in life where they feel that way. And if you lead with that, you might create something. You might do something with that in your life. And I think
Well,
that's a
I
really
think
beautiful, powerful thing.
that that's a wonderful message and a wonderful thing to message to put out there. So thanks, Hannah, for joining me and everybody and to my audience, our audience for tuning in. I've been talking to Hannah Smith of GreatFelt Theater. There'll be any email in the information if you wish to contact her. And 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 thanks again, Hannah, and thanks to everyone for who joined us to hear our podcast. Thank you.